Hello, everyone. Welcome on into a new week here on Betting Weekly Studios. And we start each new week with the Betting Weekly Dojo with myself and Neil Channing. Look at some talking points, some interesting strategies you should have in the world of sports betting. Good morning to you, Neil.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
Bit tired, Mel, mate. Bit tired this weekend. I've had a bit heavy weekend. Not partying, just out and about. Just feel a bit drained. I went to the England match on Sunday, England v Ireland.
I'm feeling quite refreshed, actually. I don't know why. I
Oh,
had a
that's good.
better week on the NFL. I'd had a couple of not brilliant weeks, and well, I won't go on about the dancing again. But he had a brilliant week. Chris McCausland got 2 10s, and finally the market has started to see it. He is kind of minus 500, which is where I said he ought to be. So I'm pleased with that. I won't bang on about it.
My football this weekend, England went to where we sit in the posh seats. Obviously, you get a prawn sandwich and a nice cold lager waiting for you at half time. Gone in to watch at half time, had a drink. The match had kicked off. Just thought I'd just finish off the drink. I didn't want to rush it. The guy said, "You can take to your seats now." I went, "No problem." Went into the toilet, had a little freshen up, went back to the seat, 3-0. First time I've ever missed 3 goals in a football match. I've missed one. I've missed one at half time, but I've never missed three.
I actually saw a picture of you at the football, and I saw the fella you went with. It's so funny, isn't it? American viewers won't probably understand this, but if you've ever been to England, I'm sure you've asked people, "Oh, you're from London, you must know Dave." We're such a small country, everybody knows each other. But actually, in the gambling world, it is a bit like that in the UK. Everybody literally knows everyone. And I saw a picture of you. You went to the football with Trevor, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know Nigel knew Trevor." But there you go. Like, everyone literally knows everybody. I thought the story was going to end up with Trevor drinking your beer then, and you having to go and get another one.
No. Well, I won't. Trevor is an Irishman. He's from Dublin. And he went there and he bet 2 bets. I'm not going to tell him what they bet, but he was been a massive bad beat for Trevor there
Oh,
in
no.
that football game. But I won't going to tell him what it is. Not many Irish fans will be very happy with Trevor for telling the bets here, but a very, very bad beat. But I went for the tried and tested England to win to 0. Come in, no problem. Get me money back from the Greece match, the last Wembley home game. Yeah, I went with Trevor. I knew Trevor for years. My dad worked with him on the racetracks many years ago, and I knew him from Bet Days and other different companies as well. So, yeah, Trevor Dunn, legend in the betting industry as well. Also, last week we spoke about match fixing, and you highlighted in particular snooker. And look what's happened this week.
Yeah, Mark King got done for match fixing, didn't he? Which is funny because we recorded it just before that news came out. So yeah, that was there has been a few in the last couple. We talked about really ancient ones, but there actually have been a few in recent years, haven't there? There were a couple of players in China that got done 3 or 4 years ago. We mostly focused on people that couldn't sue us from 40 years ago when we were talking about it last week.
Yeah, Mark King, if you haven't heard the news, he was the result of match fixing and inside information. King has been suspended from the sport for 5 years, whilst also being ordered to pay £68,299 and 50 pence as well.
But it's interesting that you say that. You know, obviously it's hard to bring prosecutions in these cases. It's also hard for the governing bodies to really know for sure whether somebody was match fixing. You know, obviously at match fixing, a lot of the time people are just going to say, no, I wasn't, you know, I just was having a bad day, whatever. It's really quite hard to prove. Obviously the betting companies can help with that. But this one, it seems like he was absolutely banged to rights. You know, he's gone through a process. It took quite a long time. He's been fined a reasonably hefty amount. Even with all of that, we talked last week about the 2007 Gambling Act. No, there was no mention of the police being involved or him being done for cheating in sport. You know, it is a criminal offence which you can, according to the law, do 5 years for. There was no, I mean, the police don't even know about it as far as I know.
Does that has to be the gambling commission and the governing body of the sport to take him to the legal procedure?
Yeah, presumably they just felt, well, there's not much point. You know, we're not really going to get a conviction. We just want him out of the sport and a fine. But it's, you know, there's no real point having laws if everyone just ignores them.
No, he is a player that's come to the end of his career. He was a decent player. He's been around for years. He's been around in the 90s when we were trading snooker back in the day, Mark King. And he's been around for years. And he isn't the level 42 bass guitarist, as a lot of people might have suspected. I was thinking, why is Mark King from level 42 got involved in snooker match fixing? That would be quite a story, but it isn't that Mark King. It's Mark King, the former snooker player there who's been done. But it's quite interesting. We spoke about it last week, and then it comes up here on this show. I've got some questions from many people as well, which we're going to come on to a little bit later on. And some questions that people have reached out to me on the podcast. But this week we're going to talk about sort of training and sort of learning. If you're a new American coming into this channel, obviously people ask this question: why do we speak in American odds? Why do we put American odds? It's rubbish. We're American. Well, if we are sponsored by an American sportsbook, the majority of people who watch this channel are American. We have a large American following, and we're sponsored by Bet Rivers Sportsbook across in America. So that's the reason why we speak in American odds. That's why we refer to things like soccer. You know, it's a people just block you if you take soccer in the world, but obviously we're Americans. We have to say the words. We speak in the American language and we talk American odds, so that's why we do. That's a lot of questions that a lot of people have asked as well. And obviously, people are trying to learn about sports betting. Obviously, some states in America have only been new in sports betting in the last 2 to 3 years, so this is all new to them, sports betting. And we were speaking about a subject that, for the dojo. And one of the subjects you spoke about a few weeks ago, we sort of have a backlog of ones, so this is the term this week, was when your poker days, how there was tutorials online, there was magazines that taught you how to play the game, educated you how to play the game. There is nothing like that in sports betting. So I suppose the best thing to do is to take us back to when the early days of poker started, you were making out, and how, how important were these kind of tutorials, how these lessons, and how it sort of evolved in the last few years.
Well, I first went to Vegas, back in the late 80s, early 90s a few times. And there used to be the Gambler's Bookstore there. And it was basically one of the only places in the world where you could buy books about gambling. I'd always come back with 5 or 6 books. They were generally about poker, though. They had maybe, I don't know, 20% of the shop was books about playing casino games. How to use basic strategy and blackjack, that kind of thing. Some about card counting and blackjack. They had a few books about sports betting, but 90% of the shop was probably poker strategy books. And even in those days, there wasn't really that many. It felt like there weren't that many. I pretty much read them all cover to cover. A guy called Dan Harrington brought out 3 books. Really in the noughties, I guess they must have been, if I try and think back to when they came out. Maybe that was in the 90s as well. And they were considered to really move the dial. People were like, oh my God, he's actually giving away the secrets of how we do this stuff. I remember big conversations at the time. People were like, oh, if everyone buys the Harrington book, the game will be ruined because everyone will be so clever. There won't be any easy money around. But at the time, there wasn't really much. I wanted to read books about sports gambling. There wasn't a great deal around. I know in the UK, well, you worked for the Racing Post, didn't you? When did the Racing Post start publishing?
I think the Racing Post started publishing itself in around about 1986.
And when did they first really have a section on sports gambling?
Well, the sports gambling started in 1990 after the World Cup. So
it took them several years.
When I first started at the Racing Post, the market was about 80% horse racing, about 15% dog racing, and about 5% others. And that was including football betting. So that was 5% of the market. It was that high much of the Racing Post. But then when the World Cup came in 1990, and England did particularly well in it, they realised, hang on a minute, and all the advertising really started kicking onto sports betting. And in 1990, when I was employed, I was 17 when I got my first job in the Racing Post. And that was when they did a minimum one page a day to sports betting in 1990 after the success of the World Cup.
Well, there was a guy that worked for the Racing Post called Mark Coton, and he started up a column called Pricewise, which still goes today under Tom Segal. And I remember there was a snooker tournament where Pricewise tipped up Doug Mountjoy, who was a veteran player from Wales, to win the tournament. I think, if I remember, it was at 40-1. And he won the tournament. I think he only won a few tournaments in his career, and they managed to pick one. It was a tournament where, the draw was known in advance. I think he was in a week and a half of the draw, and they went for that kind of age-old tactic. I think it must have been Steve Davis in those days. Avoid Steve Davis and bet someone each way in the other half. And hopefully they'll win an even money match early in the thing and go for a little run. And that's basically what happened. And I remember reading that and thinking, oh God, this guy's incredible. Learned a lot from him. Then he published a book called Value Betting. And I remember huge debates at the time, people writing into the letters page of the Racing Post saying, well, his concept was it doesn't really matter whether you think something's going to win or when you're looking at an event, you should get out of the mindset of looking at the event and trying to decide who you think is going to win. You should always just think, well, there are eight people or teams or whatever in this event. Let me have an idea of what percentage I think each of them is, and then bet accordingly if there are differences in the market. So if I think somebody is a 20% chance, and I can get 8-1, then I'm having a value bet. It doesn't matter whether I fancy him to win, whether I particularly have a strong opinion. It's a value bet if I can get bigger than the chances I think it is. Now, of course, a lot of that sort of goes back on itself, because clearly if you make somebody a 20% chance, it's because you think, it's because of your opinion, which has all the factors that you take in. But for a lot of people, this was a new concept. And really, I remember reading that and thinking, well, that's how I kind of always thought about it, but I never really knew whether that was right or not. And I found I got sort of validation from reading it. Then there was another guy who used to go to the races a lot, called Alan Potts, and he wrote a book called Betting for a Living. And then I think it was called Against the Crowd, actually. And I think he maybe did a follow-up called Betting for a Living. And Against the Crowd was, the concept of that was basically, if you just follow and do what everyone else is doing in every horse race, you're not really going to make money. You need to look for angles that no one else is looking at. But in those days, my bookshelf of gambling books had about 5 books on it. And that was basically everything you could really buy that was worth reading. I would sometimes go to the Gambler's Bookstore in Vegas and find a few more on American sports. There might be something on NFL, handicapping or whatever. And there were a couple of good books out. There was a guy called Wong. God, I can't think of his first name now. He wrote quite a lot of stuff about NFL betting, which still is worth, factoring in today and quite interesting. But it really was just books, and then to an extent magazines. In the UK, we had a magazine called Inside Edge, and I think there were a couple of other things that came out. Sometimes, you got the odd thing in the newspapers about gambling, and definitely the Racing Post switched to a bit of sports gambling every day, which was kind of educational. It wasn't just tipping, and it wasn't just a list of prices and this is who we fancy. A little bit, it did teach you how to be a better bettor, which I like. But poker at the same time, around that time, the late 90s, early noughties, was going through a big transition. By 2005, there were 5, 6, 7, I think, monthly poker magazines in the UK. And the one magazine that was about sports gambling had gone out of business by then. So you could see the difference. And obviously that was because online poker companies wanted to advertise and they were happy to spend money, whereas online bookmakers in the UK were not that bothered about advertising in a magazine that would teach people to be a better bettor. I sort of felt like that, just coming in today and thinking, what are we going to talk about this morning? I find that a bit odd, because I don't really understand why the sports gambling industry thinks, oh no, we shouldn't really try and help people to get better and enjoy the thing more and do better at it. Whereas the poker industry felt like that was a really good idea. Why do you think that is, that the two things should be so different?
Well, first, before we move on to that, the Inside Edge, the editor of Inside Edge was our very own James Easton, who works
Oh
on this
my
show.
word!
He's
Yeah,
a
of course.
contributor.
Yeah,
He
I'd
was
forgotten that.
he was the editor of Inside Edge, and I wrote an Inside Edge. If you can find a copy, a very good magazine, which was edited by our European soccer expert James Easton. I think the trouble is with that is I think that people don't want to give their edge away, do they? That's you've got to get. I mean, I remember trying to get. I was approached to work for another online channel which was based out offshore in Costa Rica many years ago, and they wanted to sit with a pro gambler during a football match live, like a Champions League game, and watch him play and watch what he does. And it was virtually impossible to get anyone to do it. Nobody wants to give their
That's
edge
funny.
away.
That is funny.
I tried to approach about 15, 20 people I knew. They said no, they wouldn't do it. People that we would know, household names that people would know who had decent followings, and they didn't want so they had to have a camera on their screen and a camera on them at the same time, showing what they were doing throughout the match, and they refused to do it. Now, one of them will be they don't want one of them would be they don't want to give their edge away, and I think the second thing is if they actually done their money. I think they'd be mortified if they lost a few quid on a big match, and that was the issue that I had.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that sort of live streaming because in poker that has been the development. So after the magazines, now we had poker books, we had poker magazines. The next thing was online training. So some people subscribe to huge cost to online training courses. Where a guy would, get you into a webinar, maybe he'd send you some questions to answer at home, and then the webinar would come up and you'd be able to ask questions and he'd go through your homework with you, that kind of thing. That moved on to training videos, and that was, I mean, what a great business model training videos was for a while in poker. So it would work a bit like Netflix, really. You'd kind of pay a monthly subscription. You'd have access to all the past catalogue of training videos, and then each week they would launch a new one. And I'm sure you're aware, but Bet Rivers, our sponsors, God bless them, they've started now to offer poker in certain states in the US, and they've gone into partnership with a guy called Phil Galfond. And Phil Galfond started up a poker business a few years ago. He was an absolute top of the online poker players, one of the best players in the world. Made an absolute fortune out of online poker. At one stage, he had so much money he bought 2 penthouse apartments next door to each other. Sorry, one on the penthouse and the apartment below, and then he put in a slide so that he could go from one to the other, which I thought was really good. I would definitely do that if I had his money. Anyway, he married a lady who was a soap actress in America, and they seem like a brilliant couple. Really seem like nice people. I've never met either of them, but anyway, he's got involved with Bet Rivers now, and I find that interesting because he was the guy that really took the poker video to a new level. He started, I think you're right, people don't want to give away their edge, and slightly in the early days of poker videos and poker training, it was all for the absolute beginner or for the intermediate player. Nobody really wanted to give away their expert knowledge. They just wanted to sort of give away the basics, which, you could find in a book or a magazine easily enough anyway. They weren't really telling you anything new. But he said, well, I think that if you absolutely give people expert knowledge, first of all, a lot of people will subscribe, they'll never really get around to watching it or doing anything about it. Secondly, a lot of people try, but they won't be able to really manage it. They just won't really be good enough at it. And thirdly, anyway, even if a lot of people do suddenly become expert, the growth that the game will experience by lots of people wanting to get better and the aspirational side of it will be able to sustain that. So, it is a pyramid structure in poker. There's a few people that are winning a fortune at the top, and most people are losing, and the money gradually goes up. Well, sports betting is exactly the same. Roughly speaking, 3% of people in sports betting over the years are making a profit. 1% maybe are making a real proper amount where they can, get a decent living. And maybe 20% have a few winning years here and there, but they're up and down, and possibly 70 odd % are just losing all the time. That's kind of how it works. But obviously, wherever you are in that pyramid, you dream that you're going to go further up the pyramid. And it is an aspirational game. And I think the training and stuff, is a good thing. So anyway, Phil Galfond started doing these training videos. I know there were lots of other companies that done them before, but his were definitely superior. And he got real load of subscribers to his thing, and people wanted to see all the back catalogue. And he would get famous poker players to come on the videos with him. And now people were like waiting desperately for the new one to drop. It was like a new box set on Netflix coming out. People would binge watch his videos. So that went on for a while. Then videos kind of faded. I don't really know why they stopped being such a big thing. Computer software then became a bit of a thing. Everybody wanted to do this thing, GTO. They wanted game theory optimization. They wanted to play perfectly in any situation. So they would run simulations. If I have ace king and I'm in middle position with 18 big blinds and somebody has raised and the bottom stack has got this number of chips, what's the absolute correct thing to do? And you can go through a gazillion hands from the past and work out what the optimal strategy would be. So people started doing that, and they started working hard on that kind of thing. And then actually, in the modern day, that's definitely still happening, all that GTO stuff and the downloading of hands and assessing and, that kind of thing. But there's also personal one-to-one coaching. People have the right, like in tennis, people who are at the top in poker, winning absolute fortunes, will pay someone who probably isn't even as successful as them to be a coach, to go through their hands, pick out little things that they've seen, to sort of knock up against them, maybe an older player or somebody that's, a specialist in one area of the game. And then, of course, the reason I bring it forward to the modern times is because what you said about the sports betting is exactly what happens in poker, this live streaming. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, live streaming wasn't much of a thing. It's probably gone longer than that. These things are always longer than you think, aren't they? I bet it was 10 years ago. And a couple of people started live streaming, and they would play and they would show you their tables, and you'd sit and watch them sitting in their little man cave with their 5 screens or whatever, playing a load of hands. And there's one guy, he does it for 8 hours every day, 7 days a week. And he's got, like, on an average stream, he'll have like 30,000 people watching him. Well, I mean, obviously you can monetize this now. You're doing it on Twitch. You've got subscribers. You're getting money out of that. He's now picked up years ago, he picked up a sponsor. And really the top 10 poker streamers in the world have all got huge sponsorship. I think now, if you went and asked those people that you asked a few years ago if they fancy doing it for sports betting, they'd see what's happened in poker and they'd see the money to be made out of it. You can pick up a sponsorship deal. You can earn money from having all those subscribers on Twitch. I think you wouldn't struggle to find someone to do it. In fact, maybe, Nigel, maybe I'm your man.
I think that Phil Galfond actually does that on the Bet Rivers website now. He streams his live matches. You can watch his poker plays. You can analyze it on the Bet Rivers website on their live stream for the poker product as well. I think the other thing with poker players, right, is that they think in their head, and you touched on it slightly. You said they're training a novice. They think, I'm not going to play him in a cash game. I'm not going to play this guy. If he wins successful, great, I can be successful. But the chance of me running into him in a cash game is different. If a guy's doing a live stream and he's playing on a match, and you're seeing him trying to bet something, and he's not getting bet, and he's going from book to book to get on his wager, say, for example, one book's limited to one size and he can't get on the price, then the whole world will front run him. And that's the biggest. Everyone's watching him, will front run it, and then he's chasing his price and he loses his edge. And I think that's the difference between the sports betting and poker betting, where it does work because he's not going to. But we're all betting into the same market. We're all betting the same match live. Then I think that will be a problem. And also the thing is, there's an element of trust, because you said that a load of people come out of the woodwork on these products that they make, gambling products, and some of them were household names, like we've mentioned. Some of them probably weren't household names. So you had to really think, well, hang on, is this guy really I'm paying into information for? And I can guarantee you now, if there was live coaching or betting, the first 500 people who put their name down, you wouldn't want no 499 of them, would you really? Like, you can just imagine who's going to come out the woodwork. I'll be your pro gambler coach. I'll be your best bet. I'll be your coach. It'll just be up the rogues gallery. It'll just be awful, wouldn't it?
It's quite funny though, isn't it? Because I do think that, I mean, I can see what you're saying about the edges. Obviously, poker's a more complicated game in lots of ways. So I could train you for 40 hours a week for the next 20 weeks, and we wouldn't have even touched the surface of the game. Whereas with sports betting, I had a guy come to me, I don't know, 10 years ago. So I run a tipping site, bettingemporium.com. Thanks for getting the plug in there, Nigel.
No problem.
We basically, we're selling picks. So a guy came to me and he said, well, I would like to be involved in your site and I'd like to sell some picks because, and I said, well, why do you want to do that? Why aren't you just, the obvious question for tipsters, why aren't you just betting on them? And he said, well, I am betting on them, but I'm finding it harder and harder to get down. And I would like a sort of set income coming in each month because as I get older, that makes me more stable. And I think that's fair enough. To me, that's a good reason for selling picks. I don't really mind somebody saying that, and I think it's fine. I like it if someone is selling picks, if they bet their own stuff. I always bet our own stuff that we tip on the site. But I don't like it if they're getting all their money from selling picks. But anyway, he came and said that. And I said, well, what are you, what kind of picks are you doing? And he said, well, he had an edge in the first goal scorer market. He was spending a lot of time looking at the amount of time that players spend on the pitch. So he was an expert in what time strikers, all the different strikers in the Premier would get substituted on average and how many minutes on average they would play. He was a big follower of injury and team news. And he thought that this gave him quite a big edge in the first goal scorer markets. And I think he was right, because actually I think the books are a bit lazy in the way they price up those markets. They just have a list of the players for each team and they have some kind of order. And they adjust it slightly to who's favourite in the game and who's underdog, how many goals they're going to score, the team. So I said, well, I quite like it. Give me a few examples of some of the bets you've had over the last few weeks and explain to me why they're good bets. Well, I could see the problem straight away, because he said, well, this guy is really good value at 5-1. And I said, well, is he going to be really good value next week then, by definition, because you think he's really good value because he plays more minutes than the other main striker for that team? And he said, yeah, he's value every week. Well, that's no good, is it? Like, if somebody pays however much for his weekly analysis and he says, well, this guy is always the wrong price, well, they don't need to pay again, do they? They could just bet him every week for the rest of the season. They're never going to pay again. So automatically, by educating, he's given away his edge, and that edge is.
It's a bit like you on the. It's a bit like you on your Strictly Come Dancing subscribe service.
That's true. That's true. I've totally
same guy
given
every
it
week.
away.
Chris McCausland is just the same guy.
I've completely given it away. I did actually have some more on at -275 during this week's show. -500 now. Anyway, we won't talk about that. But I don't know. Is it as simple as that? Is that the reason why we don't have so much educational software, educational training material, educational published material in sports betting compared with poker? Is it just as simple as that?
I think there's I think there's a lot of people who can't relate, will not be able to get across what they do. They have an edge, but they can't really put it on a video thing. If you've got, if you've got mathematical basis that you're doing this because these cards come out, you can actually go back to a statistical basis. You can tell about what percentage chance you're going to get with betting in play and betting running. Unless you've got a model that's giving you the price, a lot of it is just your instinct, your reaction. There's nothing that I wouldn't be able to do the job, and I don't think you'll have a rough idea, but there's something you've done for that particular match where you think the price is wrong. There's something going on in the game that the current result might suit the teams in question, but there's nothing you can trigger it to say, well, I've done that because of that, and I can relate to 7 or 8 different things. a lot of it is just, intuitive, isn't it? Really, that you've done it for that reason, and it's to put it down in a format. I think it's very difficult in sports betting.
Well,
I think poker's much more easy to be formatted and say this is why I do this, why we stick on this number, why we do that. In sports betting, I think it's on a game by game basis.
Take something like soccer though, in running. So we know, I don't know, we can look at a game where it's pick'em over and under 2.5 goals, and we'll know that after 5 minutes, if it's still 0-0, then it should be maybe, I don't know, minus $1.10 the under and plus $1.10 the over, if you are no vig betting it. And then maybe after 10 minutes, it should be minus 120 and plus 120. And we can easily draw up a kind of a table of where the prices should be, given the decay of time. Now, obviously, that doesn't factor in whether one team's on top or dominating the play.
But don't you think that everybody's got that? I mean, don't you think everybody has that now? Don't you think there's everyone who's got their own model, knows what price it is? And I think the only time where value in play in sports betting comes value when something that the model doesn't figure in. So, for example, that was sending off.
That was I was actually going to go on to say that. No.
Sorry.
You're okay. What I was going to say was, supposing there's a yellow card, and the yellow card a red card. Sorry, a yellow card's not going to make that much difference to the in running, but a red card. And if that red card is, I don't know, say it's 40 minutes into the game, I would say, roughly speaking, you can move the price of the favourite up 4 prices on the scale and move the price of the underdog out 4 prices. So if the underdog is, I don't know, plus 250, well, they should probably be in the region of plus 400 after the red card. Or I don't know, maybe you can definitely put a price on where that will be. I'm picking numbers off the top of my head, and I wouldn't want to be tied to those numbers I just said. But, we have a position where we know if there's a red card in this game, given the prices at the start of the game, this is where it should be now. Now, if you wanted to follow a system, you could just say, well, any time it deviates from that in the in-running market, there's been an overreaction to the red card. It's normally an overreaction. It's not normally an underreaction to the red card. The market often overreacts to red cards. So you could educate somebody to do that as a system, and I think that would give them an edge. I think there's still an edge in that, because recency bias and the amount of recreational money that comes into the market after a red card, especially on a big TV game, is definitely still there. Now, whether that's a thing that once you've taught that person once, you never really need to teach them again. You've taught them it and it's finished. They've learned that. And that's why we don't have educational videos like me telling you how to profit from red cards in football matches. I don't know. I think what you said about the Twitch thing is definitely true, that 10 years ago, a lot of players would have said, well, I'm a bit skeptical about this. I don't want to share my edges. I don't want to appear on camera. I don't want people to know about my outs. But I'm surprised that, having seen some poker players be really open about their lives. I mean, there's one guy that I think he does Get Drunk Tuesday or something, where he plays after a few bevies on a Tuesday just for a laugh. And he varies it up each night and does a slightly different thing. And obviously Sunday nights, there are much bigger tournaments than on a Wednesday night or whatever. And of course, if you were doing the sports betting, well, 3 o'clock on a Saturday would be an interesting time to tune in, or 6 p.m. in the UK on an NFL Sunday would be a great time to tune in and see what's going on. Whereas Thursday afternoon is probably a bit boring, really. I don't know. I'm amazed. I think there's a gap in the market. There's $1 million idea for you right there, Nigel. You should be working on this afternoon.
I will be. Oh, if I've got time, I'm doing Betting Weekly Live this afternoon and various different work. I'm working very, very hard. You can get the in-running play and all the best odds on the rise on Betting Weekly Live every day, 11 o'clock Eastern Time and 4 o'clock in the UK. One of the handicapping team will be on there, so make sure you subscribe. Neil will tell you what you've got to do at the end of the show. But you've got to subscribe to the YouTube channel here, Betting Weekly Studios. Just one question, Neil. If the game is a red card after 35 minutes and there's a goal and there's a red card in the match, what is your first strategy? What do you tell the people who subscribe?
Well,
what market do they go to first?
I would be happy to be against the favourite, but the most likely thing is that the goals go right down. It makes the game a lot.
Yes, we play the under 2.5 goals,
and people don't really realise
we get to the under 2.5 goals.
There you go. Another valuable thing we're going to. Last thing I'll say before we move on, because we've both been involved in the I don't know what they like to call it in America, the tout service, the tipping line, the handicapping, selling picks, basically. I do this thing, Betting Emporium. We've done it for 10 years. From day one, we said we're going to try and help you to become a better gambler. So we definitely never just say, here's our 5 NFL bets this week with just the lines and how much to have on. We always explain our reasoning and why we think it's a good bet. Now, somebody said to me years ago, don't you think there's a danger that if people become regular subscribers, eventually you'll just teach them how to pick their own selections because they'll get to see how you think and they'll learn from you and they'll just give up subscribing? It's definitely true that has happened from time to time. Occasionally we get an email into the office saying, I know you've been doing really well this season, but I'm not subscribing anymore because I feel like I've learned everything you've got to teach me. But actually, mostly people stick with it. I don't know. I do think in the handicapping sphere, in the tout's a bit derogatory, isn't it? In the tipping sphere, you have to go that way though. You have to educate people. You can't just be, we're taking Cleveland -3, and it's a lock. Those kind of businesses, they don't really survive, I don't think. I think you have to educate. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%, and it's definitely to your detriment as well. Definitely, some of the stuff that I did on the soccer service and the football service back during COVID, or just before COVID, a lot of people I know haven't subscribed because of various. The results weren't as good as they should have been, I suppose, at one season. But a lot of them have learnt the way of thinking of the English market and learnt the sport very quickly, and that happens. But that's the way you've got to go. But yeah, I do agree with that. But you've got to be transparent. You've got to give your results. You've got to give your figures without a shadow of a doubt. And that's what we get criticised on here for not giving figures. And people, I think to myself, well, hang on a minute. Every single show we do has a little figure at the bottom. I'm the worst performing handicapper this year. I know the figures are on there. It's there for all to see.
When we do our Christmas episode, we'll have a little motif, a little emoji of a dancer in the top right-hand corner of the screen with plus 25,000 points.
Yeah, we'll have that on there. Just one thing that you mentioned me this morning, which I found fascinating. Actually, we come onto it quite nicely. Actually, we're talking about the Betting Emporium and the tout service. You said to me today, one of your friends texted you about an AI tout. I mean, that sounds scary.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Quite incredible, weren't they?
Yeah, no, this guy sent me a text this morning. It was just funny because I knew we were going to talk about this topic. He just randomly sent me this text. He said his brother-in-law had subscribed to some kind of app, which was an AI thing, a kind of chat GPT kind of thing. And he typed in, "Can you tell us the best bets on the NFL props this week?" And the thing came back with 7 bets, all with reasoning. And he had 7 out of 7. I think it was the week before last. Unbelievable. Do you think, is that the future?
It's got to be, isn't it? Well, we're certainly the past. That's the future. I don't know what that's got to be the future. But that's incredible, isn't it? We'll all be out of work, Neil. We'll all be out of work soon. We don't know what we're going to be doing. But anyway, that's with 2 robots, Neil Channing and Nigel Seeley robots doing this Dojo in the next series. Unbelievable. That's insane though. But most touts might just use that and then just copy it and put it on their own service. I need to know the name of that. But anyway, I'll have to have a listen to that. But that is That's frightening and it's amazing at the same time. Just have a couple of quick questions. I know we're running out of time again here. Try to keep these shows to about 45, 50 minutes, but I haven't asked any questions for a few weeks now. People have asked me questions. A couple of weeks ago, #2yes asked you a question. Hi, Neil. I'm really enjoying the weekly dojos. Can I please ask you a question? What percentage ROI would an experienced bettor be aiming for per week? Now, per week's quite a small sample, isn't it? So, you probably wouldn't be aiming a week, but what's your answer to that?
Yeah, on the losing weeks, I'm definitely aiming to turn it around. I would say, generally speaking, it's how long is a piece of string question. If you are somebody who has access to multiple outs and isn't in a position where you're struggling to get bets on and can play, on things with a large edge that might move quite quickly, then you should have a higher ROI. So if I bet on say in horse racing, if I want to bet futures prices on Saturday's racing on a Monday, I should have a huge ROI because those are really soft markets, really easy to beat, and I can get a big ROI. The problem is nobody wants to take the bets. I can't really get much on. I'm going to get restricted really quickly. So even if I'm getting 20% as an edge, but I'm only able to bet £10 each time, that's not really helping me much. Whereas if I bet on, I don't know, I quite like betting on second division soccer in the UK, I don't have much of an edge on that. I maybe only have a 1% edge, but I can bet in thousands on a match. So I'm getting, 1% of thousands instead of 10% of tens, or 20% of tens. So I don't really like to think of it in terms of, I need to get a big ROI. Tony Bloom's probably the most successful gambler in the UK, and his syndicate generally makes about 1% on their soccer betting, and they're pretty happy with 1%. But they're betting in billions every year, billions and billions. So if you could get 1% like that, you'd be doing very, very well. I think it's a bit of a red herring where you're. Like with our tipping site, we don't actually have a very high ROI because we try to tip on things where it's easy for people to get on. We bet in golf majors, the big horse racing meetings, soccer on a Saturday in top divisions. So things like that where, people can pretty much, you can certainly get on a decent 3 figures, should be able to get on 4 figures. It's fair enough to turn around and say, however many subscribers we get, we're gonna be doing okay. But people will still be able to get on. But if we were tipping on something quite obscure, like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here on TV or something like that, and we tried to tell 300 people all to have the same bet at the same time, no one's going to get on. So the ROI is kind of irrelevant, really.
I got a question from a friend of mine called Sean, who watches and listens to every single one of the podcasts. He messaged me last week and he said, how do you keep track of your bets, Neil? Obviously, people have to keep track of their bets. It's an important part of betting. I knew you from many years ago, and you had about 50 different pieces of A4 paper, and I can't imagine the Neil Channing Excel spreadsheet being very, very high tech. Is it still the old bits of paper written on all the wages on the bits of paper?
I've got a young friend who knocks me up the odd Excel spreadsheet from time to time. He normally gets fed up with me ringing up and saying, can you do us a quick Excel spreadsheet? He's probably thinking it's about time I learn how to do it myself. But that's about as complicated as I go. But if obviously if you do keep Excel spreadsheets, you can go through and break your bets down into different sports or different divisions, or if you're doing soccer, which countries are you doing, whether it's the totals bets that you're winning and losing on, or whether it's the handicap bets you're winning and losing on. You can break it down and find out those things. I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier, a lot of poker players these days will tell you that they spend only 80% of the time playing and 20% of the time analysing the way they've played and trying to learn. I don't really hear sports bettors saying that they're doing that at all. And I think actually, if you want to improve your sports betting, going back and looking through the kinds of bets you're having and where you've been successful and where you haven't been successful is really essential. And if you do keep a Google Analytics document or something like that, you got much better chance of analysing it.
Yeah, I'm a bit old school like Neil. Pens and paper, and it's amazing when you're doing well. You write all your bets down. It's very, very hard to keep track of when you have a bad run. I must admit that. I must admit that is a very good thing. I have loads of questions, which I've got some really, really good ones from a couple of people on Twitter who sent me some direct messages, and one of them is it's so good. The guys messaged me so many stuff. We could make a show out of it. I think
we'll do a whole load next week.
Talking about the. Yeah, this one is actually talking about you. We'll come on to it, like how you, as a pro gambler, do normal things. Do you if you're ill, how do you recover? Do you pay yourself a set wager per month? How do you manage all your life as a pro gambler? Which I think is an episode in itself, which we will. I think we'll come back to that. Obviously, if you've got any thoughts, anything you want to hear Neil say, or anything from myself, any ideas for the dojo, we're happy to discuss them. I'm going to go through the questions as I can. I mean, there's so many of them that if you've got any questions. But the most important thing, Neil, what do people got to do? What do they got to do if they want to watch this show?
Definitely. Last week's show, I think on YouTube, we got about 2,100 followers, viewers, and we only managed to get less than 200 subscribes. So I don't know. I'm sorry, 200 likes. I really messed that up, didn't I? 199 likes. So the people that bet the over 200 did their money. So what I would really like you to do is to hit like if you enjoyed this video, but make sure, more importantly, perhaps, that if you haven't already, press subscribe. Now that sounds like you have to subscribe, pay money, give us your bank details. We don't want your money. We just want you to join us every week. Do join us by pressing subscribe, the Do Join Us button.
Yeah, remember, there's loads of content coming your way here on Betting Weekly Studios. Not only the Betting Weekly Dojo, all the football is back after the dreaded international break. We have the Premier League back on Thursday, European League's back on Friday, and next week the return of the Champions League before they rest up for the year. The tennis may be over, but we ended the season on the tennis, but there's some stuff coming about in the new year, and all your betting content will be great here. And if you do join us, you'll be notified of every time anything drops on the channel. That is it for this week. So thank you very much, Neil, for your time, as always. I really appreciate it. It's a good show, that. I enjoyed that. I'm going away now, and I'm going to go and set up ChanningBettingClinic.com and try to see if I can pimp you out and get a few quid for you to be the betting coach for anybody who wants any information. I think we need to get that. If anyone wants to follow you, Neil, you've now built up a bit of a following away from Twitter and social media. Where can they follow you?
I've branched out. Yeah, I've gone bananas. I've gone where the sky is blue. I better get the handle right, otherwise that could be bad, couldn't it? I'm at neilchanning.bsky.social, and you can find me on Blue Sky. I will generally Saturdays. I tend to tweet out a lot of betting stuff because that's the day when everyone's punting. So if you tune in on Saturdays, you'll find most of my betting stuff. And Sunday nights, I churn out a lot of poker stuff. So if you're interested in that, I would be very interested if people want to put in the comments what they think about the idea of whether they would pay to watch someone do Twitch streaming of them having an afternoon betting on the football, or whether they would pay for a subscription for a training site like a Netflix training site for betting. I don't think necessarily it's something I want to do, but I'd be interested to see whether there's a market.
If the prices, if there's 400 people saying yes, Sally, I think you might change your opinion. You might have a rethink. Oh yeah, that's not something I want to do. 400 people want to do it, Neil, at 250 quid a go. Oh, actually, I see what I'm free that day. All right, that's been it for this week. We'll be back next week. Enjoy your week, Neil. Take care, my friend. And good luck with all your bets. Thanks for watching the Betting Weekly Dojo. Take care.